and we move on. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. That is another myth. And we will look at this through an example that is from a research project. Which would you say is the most risk-averse profession, bankers or entrepreneurs? Before the crisis of 2008, you would probably say that that is the banker. But now we might have changed that viewpoint a little bit. A couple of researchers, they set up a test where they asked entrepreneurs and bankers to tackle a scenario. They got the same scenario. The context was a factory, and in this factory there was a risk of rupture of the pipes that would release a toxic gas that would kill 8 people if no investment was made. And the hygiene consultant recommended 2 solutions to this. The first one was an investment of $3 million, and that would mean putting a hood and special ventilation apparatus over the production area. The consultant concluded that a rupture of pipe could still spill an extremely toxic chemical, endangering the workers. And when questioned carefully, the consultants did say that 4 people could possibly die due to this. If they would instead choose a $10 million investment, that would mean replacing the pipes and confining them in a special area, and then no people would risk dying. And the problem was that they could not afford the $10 million suggestion. They only had money for the $3 million suggestion. So that was the problem that both the group of bankers and the group of entrepreneurs were faced with. And they tackled it very differently. The bankers tried to delay the decision as much as possible, implicating that they did not have enough information and they needed more of that. And they said that, well, at least we need to do the $3 million investment at least, since we have to do something. But they were reluctant to really answer and decide. Whereas the entrepreneurs, all of them went with a $10 million option, even though there was no money for it. And instead, they offered a number of creative solutions in order to make it work anyway. They suggested a number of possible technical solutions. They suggested engaging volunteers to work. They proposed giving up equity and partnering with competitors to increase the price, selling to a larger firm. They had a number of suggestions on how to be able to reach option 2. The way entrepreneurs and bankers saw their decision spaces can be schematized as illustrated in these figures. In the first figure, the green squares represent the initial problem space for the entrepreneurs. They seem to pick a comfortable level of risk first. That was relatively low, this risk level. They chose a risk level that they felt comfortable with, and then they came up with creative suggestions as to how they would increase returns at the same given risk level. So they pushed creatively to increase returns. For a given level of risk, entrepreneurs feel they can expand their problem space and increase return. The second figure shows the bankers, and this shows how they use their problem space. They picked a level of return that they aspired to, and then they came up with ideas to reduce the risk that this return involved. So they tried to reduce the risk through insurances, etc. So for a given level of return, the bankers feel they can reduce the problem space and decrease risk. So what we see is that entrepreneurs accept risk as a given and focus on controlling outcomes at any given level of risk.
They also frame their problem space with personal values and consequently assume greater personal responsibility for influencing outcomes. Bankers, they use target outcomes at reference point and attempt to control risk within the existing structure of the problem space, avoiding situations where they risk higher levels of personal responsibility. In short, their approaches to risk are different. The bankers try to predict risk, while the entrepreneurs try to control risk and are willing to accept uncertain outcomes over unacceptable